Happy Friday, and welcome to another episode of Brain Scratch. I'm John Lorden. Thank you so much for joining me here today as we look into another tragic story. This one, a home invasion turned murder with a very questionable motive, but another component that just breaks my heart whenever we hear about cases like this. The victim, an 80-year-old woman. Why would someone kill an elderly citizen? I don't know. Now, this is a case that has some coverage. We're going to do our usual brain scratch run through some of the media sources, but there's a lot of detail that I just couldn't find in that coverage. So we are also bringing on her son, Alan, to tell us more. But let's go ahead and get started by looking at a picture of Rose Goodman here. Unbelievable. I can't imagine what happens in these situations. Southwest Philadelphia is a section of Philadelphia extending from the western side of the Schuylkill River to the city line. Southwest Philadelphia contains Philadelphia International Airport, oil refineries, and other heavy industries. The housing stock is diverse with ornate Queen Anne-style twin mansions in the neighborhoods bordering Cedar Park, plainer and simpler styles of twins predominating closer to the airport, and newer row houses, many with porches, filling in many neighborhoods. Now, I know that's not a detail that I typically share with you guys in terms of the types of homes, but this is a home invasion situation, and it does appear, at least from the photos I'm seeing, that it was like a duplex. So basically, you've got two families living in what is effectively the same building, but they have their own entrances, and the buildings are separated on the inside. We'll get more details when we bring Alan on about some of those conditions. Quite honestly, I'm just wondering, because it looks like a home invasion. It's not a situation where they went to the front door and forced themselves in. They actually got in through a side window. I'm just wondering, if they knew that the victim was 80 years old, why would they go to all that trouble? Why not go to the front door and just force your way in? It might be because of that factor, but we'll ask Alan what his opinion is on that, or if he's heard from law enforcement, what they think about that. More than 80,000 people live in Southwest Philadelphia. So we got a lot of people there. And this is rolling back the clock only a few years, September of 2023. 80-year-old woman brutally murdered inside Philadelphia home, gunman at large. Philadelphia police are asking for the public's help in connection with the murder of an 80-year-old woman. Police say Rose Goodman was gunned down around 9:49 p.m. while inside her Southwest Philadelphia home on September 7th. Goodman's family says she was a loving mom, grandmother, and active member of her church. She loved the children of the community as much as she loved us, said her son, Devin Goodman. I've also seen some comments from Alan that basically she was kind of a mother to the community. And, if he had friends that they didn't have stable home lives, he would bring those friends over and she would basically treat them like her own child. So it's just, again, I can't understand why someone like this would be taken from this world in this way. She was the matriarch of both her family and the neighborhood. Authorities say the suspect gained access to the home through a basement window. Goodman was shot one time in the chest. Continuing at NBC Philadelphia, the crime still has the close-knit neighborhood in disbelief. The shooter never stole anything. Investigators say the suspect shot her and then took off. We need to do more to protect our mothers and our elders, whether it's the police, the city, the community, whether we need to strengthen our community watch programs, whatever it is, we need to make our elders feel safer walking the streets, Alan says. He has a really good point. And while researching this case, I looked into some sources, and there's honestly a bit of a disturbing trend with murders happening to our elderly citizens. And one of the things that's disturbing about it is that it's kind of vastly understudied. But for the information that they're able to pull, from the national databases of victims, there's essentially what looks like a rising trend happening in that community. So to be honest, I went looking for organizations to try to combat that, or to try to address it, or raise exposure to it. And most of what I'm finding is kind of elder abuse situations that they're trying to raise exposure to, not situations like this. So there seems to be a little bit of a gap. I'll share more information about that once we have Alan here, because I want him to hear about some of those numbers and some of the troubling stats, and hopefully give us some thoughts around that. I'm hoping he might tell us, oh yeah, no, I found some organizations, and here's how you guys can find them too. I could not find anything meaningful on that front, and that's pretty troubling in itself. Police still searching for tips. Obviously, this case is still unsolved. Southwest Philadelphia resident Mark A. Harrell told the Tribune that he's at a total loss for words over the death of neighbor Rose Goodman. Harrell said his fondest memories of Goodman revolved around her being a stable force in the community. She was the epitome of what a good neighbor is, he said. Miss Rose could always be seen tending to the community gardens and participating in the 12th Police District Town Hall meetings. This is the second 80-year-old victim to be shot in Philadelphia this week. Now, I did look into that story a little more. That victim survived, and the person that shot them was arrested. It was a 25-year-old man and was facing charges for that. So a little bit of a different situation, but still showing that troubling trend that I mentioned earlier. Neighbor Nicole Brown remembers growing up with Goodman's children. We used to run up and down the street together, she said. She was a member of White Rock Baptist Church. Juanita Benton said Goodman was the last person she thought would be killed. Our kids grew up together, and her husband was a good person. In those days, the kids could run around till nighttime and nothing would happen to them. Kids from other blocks would come around to play. Neighbor Rashida Pageant was angry and upset. They didn't have to kill her. She was so nice. She would have given them anything they wanted, and she just lost her husband a few years ago. That's the second death they've had in their family. So, yeah, we've got a family facing some tragedy here. We'll ask Alan about the loss of his father as well. Pageant said she and her daughter are looking into moving from what used to be a quiet block. The other night, someone tried to steal a car, she said. There's a lot going on. It never used to be this way. So it sounds like this neighborhood also having struggles of its own. In May of 2024, the Goodman family held a rally, and they held it leading right up to Mother's Day to honor Rose. Loved ones held a rally for Rose Goodman, who was murdered in her own bedroom. Her two sons, Alan and Devin Goodman, said the rally for Rose also honors her memory this Mother's Day weekend. My mother, she had just turned 80 and she felt safe in her home. And now with this happening, I know our block doesn't feel safe here. She was a teacher. She was a mentor and best friend, loving, very strict, but in a loving way. She taught us how to be young men, how to be gentlemen, said Devin. It would just be nice to have some closure. I know it won't bring her back. I've had good days and bad days, one day at a time. So as we're approaching the second year of this crime being unsolved, I'm hoping that raising exposure can help get some tips called in. You might be the person that has that information, and if so, I'm asking you to please call the Philadelphia Police Homicide Detective Division at 215-686-3338. If you need to remain anonymous, you can also call the police tip line at 215-686-TIPS. That's 215-686-8477. You can also email tips@phillypolice.com. But we've got a lot more information to get to here. Maybe some of that information is going to prompt your memory if you live in this neighborhood or if you know about this situation, as we dive into much more with Rose Goodman's son, Alan. And joining us on the show here now is Rose's son, Alan Goodman. Alan, thank you so much for joining us today.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
You got it. And there was some good press that was out there. I know it's challenging with a case like this because sometimes major media doesn't have those things that it likes to hook into. There's, when it comes to the elements of the crime, like someone broke in, someone killed your mother, and someone left. There's not a lot of physical pieces to kind of go over with that. But I think there's a lot to understand about the neighborhood. I think there's a lot to understand about your mother's life, and trying to find if there's some parallel between all of that that makes some kind of sense. Because I could tell you right now, my mind is just absolutely blown. Who would target an 80-year-old woman? I don't know. I just don't know.
Yeah, that's two of us. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's baffling.
Yeah. And on top of all that, I'm really sorry. Like, we all expect our parents to go when they start pushing up in
Hmm.
age. What a horrible terrible way for your mother to be taken from this world. Like that is just, it's
Yeah,
unbelievable. So my heart is out to you
absolutely.
and your family. Um,
Thank you.
let's roll it back a little bit. I
Hmm.
got a little bit of a sense of your mom, this kind of church going, um, community member, cared a lot about the children, if they were hers or if they were others in the community. I
Hmm.
think I heard mention that she was a teacher. Can you tell us more about that? Like, what type of schooling did she teach for how long?
Yeah, so when my brother and I were in elementary school, we went to Albert M. Greenfield School in Philadelphia. Uh, Once I was in the school in kindergarten, my mom actually started volunteering as a educational assistant,
Mhm.
and just to kind of be in the school, to kind of have an eye on us, but also to help other kids too. And that turned into the volunteer role turned into a assistant teaching role. So she would be in the room with another teacher, with kids in elementary school, just helping out. And so that she was always big on education with us, but she wanted to make sure that we're getting the best education that we could. And so that school was a very good school. It was downtown Philadelphia. I don't know how she got us in there, but it was great education, and also we knew not to act up because she was in the school, so we were on our best behavior.
Smart woman, right off
Yeah.
the bat. Yeah, and then on top of all that, it seems like you've kind of followed in her footsteps a little bit. You also teach people, right?
Yeah, and in a couple different ways. So yeah, I actually ended up being a teacher, I've always liked uh teaching, whether it's in corporate, whether I'm mentoring somebody or coaching somebody. And so that's always kind of been in my blood, probably, from my mother. And
Yeah.
so yeah, I end up now being a college professor, and I actually run a camp for kids from 6th to 12th grade. So
Oh, yeah.
I teach Sunday school also. So it's all through, my DNA, I guess.
I guess so. And it's just, I mean, what an amazing way to honor your mother and the legacy that
Hmm.
she instilled in you. That's beautiful.
Yeah. My
Um,
sister's also a teacher as well. So
wow,
so it went through the family. Yeah.
wow. So I understand it's three children, right? Two brothers and your sister for the
Hmm.
family makeup. And your mom was married. I'm sorry to hear that your father passed a couple years ago as well. How long
Yeah.
were they married?
They were married 50, almost 58 years.
Wow.
Uh,
Wow.
yeah, yeah. And so my dad passed away in 2021. He was a veteran. One day, 3 years prior to that, he had like a massive stroke, and he never fully came out of it. And
Wow.
so he was in a nursing home for about 3 years before he passed away. So,
Oh, geez.
mhm.
So was this the same house where she was killed?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So they lived in that house um since when I was born. My brother's 2 years older than me. When I was born, we moved into that house. So that's the
Okay.
only house that we know, basically.
So she's going through a couple of big changes in the time that she's been in that house. But then she gets to the point
Yeah.
where her husband isn't home with her and she's kind of alone for 3 years. How was that for her? Did she deal with that okay? Or,
It was difficult. I mean, it was sort of a transition as my dad was in a nursing home, and so he wasn't home, but he was 10 minutes away, but he wasn't in the house with her.
yeah.
And so adjusting to being in the house by herself was a challenge. But also, my dad he did a lot of things, and he paid the bills. He cooked some. He handled all the things around the house, and he repairs like any of that stuff. Like my dad was very organized. He was on top of that.
Yeah.
So once he passed away, we had to try to help my mom get organized around doing those types of things, and that was a challenge because none of us live in the state. And so, doing it over the phone or traveling in to help. I mean, that was helpful when we can do it, but just going from being married for that long to now you've lost your partner. I mean, it was challenging. It's probably more challenging than she shared with us.
Yeah. Yeah. But she's also hooped into the community, right? And she's got church, and I mean, she has these other things in her life that are still clicking and still working for her. Hmm.
Yeah, yeah. I think she started to towards the end there. I think she started to sort of isolate, just because of all the things that were happening in the city, and she watched the news, so she knew. I would always tell her not to, go to the bank, and but she's old school, so she wants to see her money and see it work with somebody directly, and make sure they deposit into her account, those kind of things. It's hard to break those kind of things, and so I would caution her as far as going out, like don't be out late at night, don't go to the bank, as often, like try to get her to do mobile deposit, like that didn't stick. So so that those yeah, so those are kind of things we were a little concerned about. And so that's why between the three of us, we talk to her just about every day.
Yeah, tell me a bit about what you saw happen with the neighborhood. I mean, you spent a good chunk of your life there, but it's
Mhm.
getting to the point where it was kind of scary for her. We read some comments earlier on some articles I found, and it sounded like other neighbors were also saying like it might be time to get out of here. Like, has the neighborhood turned over the years, or what happened?
Yeah, so what growing up, the neighborhood was our block in particular was pretty stable. We had a lot of neighbors who, had kids around. We had kids around the same age. We all grew up together, and so our block was different than the neighborhood, so to speak. I mean, we had a lot of successful uh, families and kids on that block.
Yeah,
My brother's a dentist. We have across the street, our best friend's an attorney, of like a healthcare professional. We got like so, we were probably different than some other blocks in that neighborhood. Um, and then the neighborhood started to change recently a little bit because we started to see more diversity, a little bit more diversity in and around the neighborhood. But I think Philadelphia as a whole had taken a turn as far as violence. And I do remember in the months before my mom's murder, there were a couple other seniors in the city who were either robbed on the street or shot. I remember two specific stories that I read about as I was kind of looking back on this. And so, it kind of just speaks to how, vulnerable our elderly citizens are.
yeah, and I know in our offline conversation you mentioned that there used to kind of be like rules of the street about we don't hurt the elderly people, we don't go after children, and those
Mm.
rules are either not being paid attention to anymore or they're just gone at this point.
Yeah, I think they're gone. I think anybody's a target at this point. And so it's just unfortunate. I mean, obviously nobody should be a target, but
Yeah.
just having an elder, somebody who's 80 years old, who's lived through so much, and to get to the point where you're retired, you own your home, and that's your sanctuary, and for somebody to violate that. And like I said, not just for my mom, but for other people that have had their house broken into or whatever it happens. Yeah, it's unacceptable.
Yeah, absolutely. So at this point, it sounds like she's starting to isolate a bit. Is anyone
Mhm.
coming by for regular visits? Does she let anyone come in? Does she have friends that stop by or
Yeah, so we the folks on the block definitely check on each other.
hmm
So we have that. So parents and their kids are adults now. Some of the kids will come by and either check to make sure she's okay. We have some family members nearby who will check. My uncle would come by and check as well and call. She would talk to some of her friends on the phone. So we were keeping in touch with her to make sure she was okay.
yeah.
My mom was never one to want to burden somebody, so uh, I don't think between my siblings and I, we probably all didn't know this quite the same information.
hmm
Because if she was struggling, she wouldn't really share that with us too much because she didn't want us to worry about her.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Nobody new involved in her life at this time period, like no workers that she might have that were coming to take care of her in some way, or repairman or anything like that.
Yeah, so there were a couple different people who came to do work on the house. Uh, she had someone come do her water heater at one point. I think that was a company. So they did that. That was a one-time thing. And then she had like a toilet leak from the toilet upstairs, and she had a couple different people come in and kind of work on that. My understanding was that there was another person who worked on the roof and did some work, and then uh, they may. I don't know if it was that person or not, but someone actually came back looking to do more work, and my mom kind of shooed him off and was like, "Nope, nope, I don't have any other work to do. Everything's good."
Hmm.
But apparently there was at least one person looking to do more work, and it come back. I found it out later. It come back a couple times just to inquire. So,
That's kind of weird. That's a little interesting.
hmm
Um,
hmm
and from comments from you, actually, it sounds like she could be tough. Like she could be pretty straight, right?
yeah, yeah.
Oh,
My mom was yeah, she's pretty tough. She's from North Philly.
yeah.
So she's she's not gonna just she's not a pushover. Let's put it that way.
Okay. Are you or any of the other siblings aware of any disagreements that she was having, in September or August, like leading up to this?
So, other than the person coming back and asking for work, next door to our house is a house that we had a neighbor that was living there. I believe perhaps he was renting the house. He moved probably less than a year before this happened. He moved away, and
Okay.
so the owners of the house were renovating the house, right? Because these houses are, I mean, they're fairly old houses. So,
Yeah.
but what we found out was that they were renovating it, but at night, and so or at odd hours. And so my
Oh,
mom, you know, was kind of either keeping her awake or was just very loud. And so at one point, I found out from my siblings that she had called the police because she had complained a couple times. I guess they didn't do anything, so she called the police to come over and handle it. And then it stopped. So,
okay.
like I said, I
Okay.
don't, I'm not speculating as to whether that has anything to do with her or not, but that was just the only other thing I knew about.
Okay. And am I right? I kind of, I've seen pictures of it. Am I right in assuming that this is almost like a duplex setup where it's two homes, but they're kind of the same building, but they're separate?
Well, so in Philadelphia, the big thing is row homes, and
Okay.
so all the houses are connected. So we have
Okay.
basically the same wall, so they all sit next to each other. And so that would have made that, even louder, because you're kind of sharing a wall, so to speak. I mean, obviously there's, stuff in between, but
Yeah.
it's insulated pretty well. But the houses they sit right next to each other.
Right, right. And I saw there's a little walkway basically between her house and the next house over on one side. Because that's where her side entrance is, and we think the window that they came in through, right?
Yeah, so there's an alley. So our house has there's an alley right next to our house, and then there's some apartment buildings that sit on the other side of that alley. And
Okay.
so that one of the apartment buildings had a lot of weeds that kind of overflowed over their gate and kind of blocked the alleyway. So it
Yeah.
kind of gave it a little cover. Um, and then down that alley is the window in which the perpetrator got in.
Okay. Um, so when was the last time that you had spoken to her?
I spoke to my mom on the 5th.
Okay, so two
Um,
days, two
yep,
days
and
before.
yeah, 2 days before. Yep, and then my brother had talked to her on the 6th in the evening, um, and then my sister had talked to her that morning.
And just all normal conversation. She's not pointing out anything strange with any of you guys, or just life as
Nope, no,
normal.
all normal. Yeah, all normal conversations, just checking in, seeing how she's doing. Yeah, so nothing out of the ordinary.
Okay. Um, I'm a little confused because I've read a few different versions of what happens around this, and I'm just trying to get the details ratcheted down as good as we can. Do we know what
Sure.
time the murder actually took place? Was it because I understand that law enforcement shows up like around 10 p.m. on September 7th, right?
Yeah, so my understanding is that it happened in the morning. So like somewhere like 4 or 5 a.m. ish.
Oh, really?
Um, yeah, that's my understanding. And that um after it happened, my sister called in the morning. My mom is a late sleeper. And so she would be in bed until because she stays up late. So she would still be in bed at noon or whatever. But on this particular day, my sister called in the morning, and she didn't get her. Normally she gets her. And so she called her a couple times and didn't get her. And so that's when she alerted us to say, hey, Does anybody talk to mom today? Like this is a little unusual.
Okay,
So that was
that's
that was the first clue. That was the first clue to something happening, something being up.
yeah, that's kind of interesting to me because when I was thinking, yeah, some of the news stories just they're painting it like it happened at night, like somewhere at 9:45 at night or something like that.
Mm,
Thinking about that time frame, and I've been kind of caught up on why the perpetrator is doing these this side entrance instead of just like going to the front door and like just brute forcing their way in. Like, she's an 80-year-old woman.
mm,
Say that you're there
mm.
to you're looking for donations for a church or something. Get her to open the door and then just step right in. Um,
Yeah.
but instead, there was all this effort and energy spent to kind of sneak in there. If they had known her patterns, and even if they didn't know her patterns, I mean, if you're
Mm.
sneaking in at 4 or 5 in the morning, there's a good chance that whoever's in there is going to be asleep. Um, it seems like the possibility that maybe it started as a potential robbery is there, and then maybe things got out of hand and they just bolted and didn't take anything after the fact.
Yeah, that's kind of that's what I think. I think the initial motive was probably a robbery. Um, and then the person encountered my mom. Kind of maybe she surprised him, and then he shot her and ran out. Here's the thing though is that because of the cover of those weeds, and then there
Yeah.
was a truck like a van sitting right by the alley, it gave really good cover for somebody to take their time. And so when I actually walked back into the backyard, I noticed that the screen was cut on the back window, both back windows. Screen was also cut on the screen door for the back door.
Yeah, I saw footage of that.
And
Wasn't that screen door pretty heavy? Is it like a metal screen door?
it's a metal screen door. The screen door was kind of heavy. I mean, had that mesh there, but honestly, like you're not getting in either front or back door. They're thick steel doors. Like you're just not. Then that's why he wasn't able to get in either of those. He actually did try the front door.
Oh,
Tried to
he
pull
did.
it open, but that door is also, I mean, a thick metal door followed by another thick metal. Like you're not. It's almost almost like Fort Knox. Like you're not getting in there.
Yeah.
And so he took his time and found the one spot where he could get in.
How do we know that he pulled the
My
front door? I'm just curious. How do we know that?
'Cause you can see how it was pulled a little bit, like some of the wood. You can tell it's a little slightly off of the door, so you can
Okay.
tell.
Okay.
Yeah. And so he what he did was my understanding is he also may have had some tools and gloves. It's that he went to the side and took the gate, kind of the metal kind of gate off of the window, basement window, and found one where he could slide in.
Okay. Okay. So we have your sister can't get a hold of your mom. You guys start talking about, hey, something must be up. And then someone reaches out to a neighbor named Ted Jackson to kind of do a knock on the door and check on her, right?
Yeah, so Ted lives across the street. He's always looked out for my family. My dad he had a great relationship with both my parents, but my dad would look out for him, and so he felt indebted to him to look out after my mom. And so after a while of us calling and we couldn't get her, then we got in touch with Ted to to come over. So I think Ted knocked on the door, rang the bell. There was nothing, and so when we had a cousin nearby who had a key to the
Okay.
house, and so that cousin came by, and cousin is also a nurse, and so she came by, and she and Ted went in the house together because they didn't know what they were going to find, and so it was a hot day that day, and so we already were processing like perhaps my mom, maybe she fainted because of the heat. Obviously she has air conditioners, but you never know. Air conditioner can go out or something. And so she may have been too hot. She may have collapsed and hit her head or something. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So we weren't thinking that she had passed, but we were thinking that something happened. And that hopefully she'll be found okay.
Yeah. Have they described to you what they see as they go in? Do they notice anything at the front door or
No, you know what? Um, they were more so just looking for my mom.
yeah.
What they didn't notice is that obviously the first time is that because no one's expecting someone to have broken in, right? So they come in, they look for my mom, they go upstairs, right, to find her. What they would have seen is the basement door was kicked in, but they weren't looking for that, right? So because the perpetrator came through the basement, kicked the basement door open, and came upstairs. So they weren't looking for that. So they went upstairs, um, and they went in the front room, which is the kind of master bedroom, and they saw my mom laying there. Um, they didn't notice all the blood that was there. Um, they noticed a trail of blood, but they didn't notice the blood that was on the floor. Our cousin, who's a nurse, jumped right into doing CPR because that's how she's trained.
Yeah.
Um, and and then they also noticed that it was warm in the house. And to get detail, my mother's body was warm, so they assumed that something had just happened. Perhaps she had fell, perhaps she had a heart attack. Like, yeah, they didn't really. Nobody's thinking that she was shot. Nobody's thinking that.
Yeah.
Obviously, I wouldn't have thought that either.
Yeah. And we have it's a single gunshot situation. So like if you don't know to look for, one
Hmm.
entry wound on the front.
Yeah,
Was she on the ground or was she in her bed or do we know about her body position?
yeah, I believe she was on the ground.
Okay.
And that's where they found her. And then obviously they tried to revive her, called the police. Uh, the Because the air conditioner, something had happened with the air conditioner. Um, the like I said, her body was still warm, so they didn't know
Hmm.
like when this had happened. So they assumed that they could revive her.
Right.
They didn't know that she was already gone.
Yeah. What's strange to me is you I kind of was going one way with this thought about how they're entering and maybe they're looking for this to be a robbery, but then kicking in the door, the basement door, that seems like they're rolling kind of hot, doesn't it, for trying to pull off a robbery, especially if they were trying to get the woman's things while she was still sleeping. Um,
Yeah, to me it seems like the person was either inexperienced at breaking into houses.
yeah,
Um, that's what I think, because we didn't find anything stolen. I mean, and if you think about it, I mean, it's an 80-year-old woman
yeah,
who ideally this person has seen before. I mean, why not simply tie her up and then take
right,
whatever you're going to take and leave, right?
right.
Had to be somebody, maybe, I don't know, maybe she knew the person, maybe not. It's just so confusing. And so, yeah, it just didn't make sense how this came down. And we didn't find anything stolen either. So that's why I say the person had to be perhaps inexperienced, and that once this happened, they just ran out.
Yeah, and someone that's also clearly not thinking of the consequences of these actions because, taking
Hmm.
even if it was someone that she would have recognized and be able to point out and say, "Oh, I know it's that kid from down the street." Um,
Hmm.
a little robbery rap as opposed to a murder charge, like those are completely different worlds. So it's someone that clearly
Yeah.
doesn't understand that. Um,
Right.
hmm, yeah, that is it's just terrible on all fronts. Was
Yeah.
there so police show up? It's obvious to them, I'm sure, that this is a homicide, so they probably bring their investigators right off the bat. Do you know if there was anything in terms of evidence that was found in the home?
I think a bullet was found. So what we learned is that the encounter happened in the middle room. So there's a room right at the top of the steps.
Okay,
And so I guess he was in there. I don't know what he was looking for. My mom came in, and then he shot her in that room because there's a bullet hole in the wall. Um, and then he ran out. Couldn't get out through any of the doors because you need keys to get out too. So he ended up going out the same way he came in the basement
okay.
basement window.
Um, Well, that's a good thing because we've got kind of localized places for potentially fingerprints, DNA, stuff like that. Do we
Hmm.
know if they collected any? Do they have fingerprints?
I saw some. I saw the stickers when we went in, so I guess they tried to lift some fingerprints. My understanding is that he was wearing gloves, so obviously that makes it harder.
Sure.
Um, but so I don't. I'm not sure whether they're able to lift a fingerprint or not. So, and that's probably something they couldn't tell me anyway. So,
Yeah. Yeah. Are you the main contact with the investigator on this? I know they will typically kind of choose one family member to talk to, and that's it.
yeah, I'm the main contact. I actually was in touch with the detective last week, actually. So,
Yeah.
yeah, still checking in and making sure they know we're doing things like this and getting the story back out, which they're very appreciative of. It's this is a top priority with the police department, and so they've done a wonderful job of keeping us in touch of what's happening and what they're doing. So I
That's
applaud
good
them
to
for
hear.
that.
Yeah, that's
Mhm.
really good to hear. Unfortunately, we don't hear that often enough in these situations. Um,
Yeah.
so yeah, bullet would obviously be found in the wall then, because you talked about the bullet
Hmm.
strike in the wall. Was
Hmm.
there any
Yep.
casing?
Um, I'm not sure about that. Not
Okay,
completely sure. Yeah.
okay. And we don't know about DNA or anything like that.
No, we don't know about DNA.
Okay. So we know how the assailant left. I did see a comment from a neighbor, and it sounded like there's at least, I don't know if it's a rumor or if there's a witness, but someone said they thought that he left on a bike. Do you know anything about that?
Yeah, so I know there was something about and I don't know if it was that was definite or whether it was just a theory, but that the person came on a bike and kind of came alongside that van that was right there blocking the alley. And it's interesting because I don't know where they would have left the bike while they broke into the house. Like that part is kind of, you know, I'm not sure what happened there, but that's rumor has it, I guess, is that the person was riding a bike.
Okay. And it's only rumor. So we don't
Mm.
have a witness that's saying like, yeah, I'm the person that saw this person tear off on a bike after.
Right, correct. Yeah.
Okay.
So that kind of information would be extremely helpful because I think that's what the police are looking for. Uh,
Okay.
you know, yeah.
Yeah. Good to put out there. Was she the type of person like I know you mentioned that she liked to go to the bank, she liked to see her money. Like did she have a bunch of money socked up at home? Did she have things that were of value that were kind of known that maybe someone in the community might have heard about? Oh, did you see this thing that she has? Anything like that?
No, I mean she was on a fixed income, so it's like yeah, she wasn't sitting on any piles of cash or anything valuable like that.
Yeah.
Um, It's funny when I was reading the comments under some of the articles, some of the folks were like, well, she was really well dressed and she probably had some money. And no, my mom was just well dressed. Like she just liked to be well dressed. Like
Yeah.
that, and that's the appearance that it gave. That's great. I mean, but no, she wasn't, which again, which makes it even more baffling because it's not like
Yes.
there was anything to really steal. I mean, she was like I said, she was on a fixed income. So
Yeah, well, and I know for the older members of my family, like even look at their like electronics and stuff, like things that you might think are valuable to people, like some old CRT TV or something. Like it's a whole
yeah.
different level of stuff that's in there. So once again, it's either pointing to inexperience in terms of the person that's breaking in and what they think they're going to find, um,
Hmm.
or potentially just a different motive that we're not understanding for some reason, that we're missing a piece to complete that puzzle. Um,
Yeah, that's what I think. If something that we just don't know, and we probably won't know until this person is caught.
yeah,
Maybe.
and
Yeah.
so there was nothing obvious, like her bank accounts weren't touched after that, like her bank, her checks were still at home, like her ATM card, all
Hmm.
that stuff was all there.
Hmm. Yep.
Hmm.
It's all there. So there's nothing that we've been able to determine was stolen.
Um, did you happen to kind of scope out the neighborhood for any Ring doorbell cams?
Yeah, so there I know there's a few in the neighborhood, and so I know the police took a look at those to see if there was anything on there.
Yeah.
And so I'm pretty sure one of them picked up a bike, and I think that's how they determined that there was a bike in the area. It doesn't necessarily tie them to the house,
Right.
you
Right.
know. And so again, that's kind of an open end of how can that, you know, making that link if that's the person.
Okay. Okay. Uh, do you know if there was any other witnesses that provided any helpful information? Did anyone hear the gunshot?
No, nobody heard the gunshot. And you know, it's interesting you say that because normally there would have been some construction next door, and that really would have muffled it.
Right.
Um, but also there was nobody living in the house next door, and so there's nobody to really hear it
Right.
either. I'm thinking that, and again, just theory, that the person that did this, once they fired the gunshot, they realized that somebody could have heard it and they left, not
Hmm.
really understanding that there was nobody next door, perhaps.
Okay.
So,
Okay. Gotcha.
but nobody to my knowledge reported hearing anything.
Okay. So law enforcement is probably still, I mean, they want tips, they want witnesses, they want anyone that has any piece of information on this. Um,
Correct. Hmm.
okay. Uh, yeah. So I know you mentioned there's some other elderly citizens that had been attacked. I mentioned before you showed up about the 80-year-old man that was shot that same week.
Hmm.
And you have spoken up in the press about how do we protect our elder citizens. Are you finding any organizations that are addressing this type of issue? I'm finding stuff for like elder abuse and
Hmm.
basically almost like family situations where they're embezzling or taking money from them, but nothing really for
Yeah.
this type of violence. Have you found any organizations?
I haven't really. I mean, obviously they have like gun violence and anti-gun organizations, but not specifically for this.
Yeah.
And I've checked a number of organizations that deal strictly with elderly people, and I haven't found anything with this. So I kind of had a have this ongoing conversation with some of the state representatives, and you know, about how do we put some legislation in place where we put cameras and lighting in places that are populated by elderly folks. You know, maybe everyone over a certain age gets a ring cam, and you know, or something. You know, some kind of added protection or even just deterrent for this
Yeah.
type of crime.
That's
Yeah.
a really great point. Yeah, because I imagine it could be a bit of a hard sell, to your 80-year-old mother about, hey, we're going to install this, this new type of camera doorbell system for you. You're going to be able to check it from your cell phone, and you don't even have to answer the door. You can talk to, like, they're just not going
Yeah.
to use it, right? So it would almost have to be some type of service, like a security service that is doing some form of
Mhm.
monitoring of those types of devices for the citizen. Um,
Yeah, yeah, and I will because I will say because that's been something that we've you know the three of us, my brother and sister and I, we initially we were kind of blaming ourselves because there wasn't a ring cam, there wasn't an alarm,
hmm.
but we also know our mom, and we know that the alarm wouldn't have been on, the ring cam wouldn't have been on. I mean, it's like we because she wasn't. My dad was a lot better with technology than my mom was.
Yeah.
And so we knew that even if we had that on, because we kind of talked about this afterwards, I don't think that would have prevented this,
Yeah, well, and
unfortunately.
that's the thing about cameras in general, right? Like they're kind of used after the the heartbreak, the issue, the murder, but they're
Hmm.
used as a tool that could
Hmm.
be helpful for that. That was one of the things I was kind of wondering about when I was looking into this and getting caught up on, like, why didn't they just go to the front door? I was wondering if it was because they were worried about that neighbor's front door being right there, and if
Hmm.
they make too much noise, that neighbor's going to come popping out. Um,
Yeah.
but to that point, yeah, I think there is something there in terms of there are devices, but we do have to figure out how to have those devices be just super super easy to the point where the person that being protected really doesn't even need to do anything. And I don't know if that's
Yeah.
some
Yeah.
level of AI monitoring with a rules based system that kicks an email to the family members as soon as something weird shows up, or I don't know, something along those lines. But it's really troubling because the elderly population is exploding. Like we're living longer year over year. So as that population increases, the violence against that population is also increasing. Like the stats are growing along with that population. Um, and I kept running into this really troubling thing about there's been recognition for probably the past 7, 8 years from a few different organizations to there being a problem with these types of attacks specifically, but that it's largely understudied. So I found a scientific study published in Injury Epidemiology in 2021. And it states that nearly 1,800 homicides were reported in 2018 among individuals aged 60 or older in the US. And the characteristics and circumstances of these homicides are understudied, despite the trending showing that these homicides are increasing. 68% of these victims are killed at home. So, to your point, some level of monitoring that is done at the home would be significant in 68% of these cases. 44% of the time, those deaths are happening from a firearm, and that is far more than any other weapon. I think the next closest weapon was a knife, and it was somewhere in like the 15% range or something like that. So 44% of these are firearm murders. They note that common contexts of firearm homicides were familial or intimate partner problems, which we know the stats on, and that breaks the ages, right? Like we can look at people in their 20s, 30s, 40s, and we know that intimate partner homicide is a huge number. But on top of that, robbery or burglary was next in line. Argument, which is kind of why I wanted to poke into that situation a little bit with the construction that was going on. Like, could she have miffed someone just with her approach? Um, and then illness, interestingly, is another one. And I think that might be caretaker type situations, people that become frustrated with that situation at some level. Um, Also in the UK, they're kind of noting the same thing. They're recognizing the problem, but it's understudied. An article from 2016 posted at independent.co.uk, which was titled Murder of Older Women is More of a Problem Than You Think, highlights how there are myths and stereotypes around elder homicide. And they basically are kind of selling this fear of the old stranger danger scenario that we were taught, in the 80s as children. Um, Basically, a man who attacks a vulnerable elderly person, um, and they have no connectivity to the victim whatsoever. And it's usually linked to a burglary or theft offense. But then they note the work of a woman named Karen Ingala Smith. She's a CEO of a domestic and sexual violence charity. And she collects information on women killed by men in the UK through a project she runs called Counting Dead Women. That data challenges that whole stranger danger myth. And her data actually shows that most of the women that were over 60 that were killed by they were killed by a male family member, and it was either a spouse or a son or even a grandson. So another significant threat to these families here. Of course, we're also talking about in your mother's particular case, someone that might be recognized as a parental figure by people that she's not the biological parent of, just because of her place in the community and the work that she had done and being an educator and all that stuff. So it just really, the pool, even if you're looking in that direction, is just huge.
Yeah. Yeah, that was my parents, both my parents were really folks who really got into the community and really were loving to, even like I said, even those who weren't biological children. I mean, I learned so much even after my parents passed away, my mom was killed, of people she had mentored, people she had helped, you know, uh, my older son lives out of state, and when we told him, obviously, and our children, was devastating. But he mentioned that she had been calling him and just make sure he was okay and checking in on him. So that was just kind of person my mother is, which really made this even more shocking that somebody who was kind of loved in the community, active in a church. Um, our home was the neighborhood home, so all the kids that we knew would come by and hang out at our house. I mean, so someone who didn't have any beef or anything with anybody, and had a good reputation and was loved, to have this happen is, uh, you know,
Yeah.
it's just devastating. It's baffling. It's all that stuff. And so we're kind of left to, not only the neighborhood carrying kind of the shock and grief from this, but obviously our family, we're still carrying this around. And what we've decided to do is, instead of just carrying this around, we decided to turn this around and help other people, and really continue to push this case, because that's what my mom's a fighter, my dad was a fighter, so that's what they would do, and that's why I'm thankful for you to have me on. We're pushing the story, and also pushing for this, try to get some legislation to get some help to our elderly folks who need more protection than they're getting now.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And what a perfect way to honor the legacy of your mother and your father
Mm,
for that sake. Yeah. Um,
mhm.
Especially when we're worried about our streets turning like this and about, the old rules of the street not applying anymore. Um,
Yeah, absolutely. A lot of
yeah.
guns out here too, so it's
Yeah.
yeah, it's just a bad combination.
Yep. Yeah, and with this one, it's so tricky and it's weird because, I always look at the stats and try to measure them against situations, but they don't, unfortunately, that's not how you get to the truth of these cases. These stats are telling
Mhm.
us, the stranger danger situation, probably not what usually happens, but it could have been
Yeah.
in this particular case. And with the factors that you're talking about, it really looks to it. Like in my mind, I've got this picture of a young man that just doesn't know how to find his way in the world yet, and he's looking
Mhm.
for the means, and he's making a really really bad decision,
Yeah.
and then flees. Mm,
Yeah, perhaps there's a drug problem, perhaps there's some other things at play.
right.
And like I said, it's hard to tell. I think it's one of those situations where, we're trying our best to practice patience because we know the police are working on it. These things take time. Eventually somebody will say something. And that may kind of drive this toward a conclusion. So we're just trying to do all we can, make sure people don't forget the story. And the more that people see the story, that were in the area, that perhaps remember something that perhaps they didn't think about in the beginning, you know, those things will come back into memory, and folks will share it. And so that's really what we're hoping. Also, just to humanize my mom as not someone who was just in a newspaper or on the news, but somebody
Yeah,
who was, very human, very loving, helpful in the community, you know, uh, mother to some of the motherless. She was really just a wonderful person. And I think the more that we talk about that, uh, I think, you know, some folks will have empathy enough to really rethink what they saw that day.
absolutely. I think you're making a really good point, and I missed a question at the start of all this. Can you tell me about
Mhm.
a memory that stands out for you in terms of an act that she did to show that kind of compassion and care, either for you and your siblings or for anyone?
Yeah. So it's funny when things happen and you remember them just in the context of something like this happening. And I remember, when I was younger, I used to watch on TV. I used to have the cops and robbers shows and everything, and I used to watch those things and had quite an imagination. And but I would actually, in kindergarten, I would walk down, or we would go to the bank, which is like a few blocks from our house. I think it was First National Bank, down at 58th and Baltimore Avenue in Philadelphia. And one day we went. I believe we walked. We may have driven. I'm not sure, but we go in the bank, and you go in the bank, and back in the day, the banks you go in, there's no ATM, obviously. There's just a vault, and the bankers are sitting in front of the vault, and then there are usually chairs. And so my mom, she went in as usual. She got in line at the bank, and told me to go sit in the chair, wait for me. I'll be done in a second. They usually have the little bowl lollipops, and you grab one out of there and kind of wait. Well, in my 4-year old, 5-year old mind, sitting there, and I look across at the door and I notice that the security guard has a friend because the guy comes in and puts his arm around him. And then I mentioned watch all the cops and robbers shows. I then realized that the guy who put his arm around the security guard had a stocking over his face and a gun to him. So this is my first time seeing a real gun.
Whoa.
Um, the other guy comes in, also has stocking over his face, and it's like, everybody get on the ground. And then he goes over to the teller, holds his gun to her, and says, like, get a bag, put some money in it. Right. So just like, we used to see on shows. And so my mom's probably about a good, I'm judging, maybe 20 feet from me because she's in line and I'm sitting over in a chair. Everybody's on the ground except me. I'm sitting in the chair. And so I kind of look at my mom, and she tells me, she motions for me to get out of the chair, slide down the floor, and to crawl over to her. Uh, and so I start to crawl over across the floor. And I noticed the guy who's got the gun to security guard looks at me because I know they said very clearly, nobody move.
Yeah.
He looked at me and he watched me as I crawled over to my mom. My mom took me and kind of put her under her body. And I sensed some humanity there because he could have, I don't know what would have happened today. That would have been maybe different, but I
Yeah.
saw a little bit of humanity where he said he's a kid. We just want the money. We're gonna go. Like, we're not trying to hurt anybody. I don't think they were, but that was a risk. And so I thought about this in the context of that was the first time my mom and I had experienced, or at least that I experienced with my mom, seeing a real gun and a real crime happening. And I thought about that, that I couldn't protect her from gun violence now. And that was a struggle for me because, that popped into my head how she protected me, how she
Yeah.
took a risk and protected me, but I wasn't there to protect her. And so that's a difficult um, thing to carry. Even though I know that, um, I don't know if that would have made a difference if I was there or not.
Right.
Um,
Right.
and I live out of state, but there's, when you're grieving, those are the things that pop in and kind of weigh on you.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I really appreciate that you're able to open up and talk about that so much. I would assume that you're getting help dealing with that stuff because I can tell by the way you're sharing that story with us, you're on the other side of it. Like that's not a belief that maybe is hitting you the same way that it did when it first came around. But yeah,
Yeah, it's I've had so I have therapy, so that's
yeah,
that's helped tremendously. My church family has really helped as well, as
yeah,
well as some friends who have really stepped up just to be there in case I need to talk or just to get me out of the house, and that, especially in the very beginning. But I will say that grief is really, it's not really something that you get over. I think it's more of you learn some tools to really help cope with it.
yeah.
Um, I kind of related to when I had a trainer at the gym. He had me do a workout, and at the end, he had me do a plank. And then during the plank, he put like a plate on my back, which I wasn't expecting. So I had to
Wow.
exert some, right? Yeah, yeah. He was a nice guy, right? But I had to exert some extra energy and extra strength to hold it up.
Yeah,
And so with grief, it's kind of like that, where you have this extra weight on you and you have to strengthen yourself through therapy, through prayer, through all these different things by talking about what happened, helping other people. All those things strengthen you to carry the grief that won't go away, but you'll
yeah.
just get better at carrying it.
When you have those moments where you feel like you need to be close to your mom, is there
Mhm.
a particular song, a particular place, a particular picture? Where do you go to connect to her?
Yeah, so I know my mom, she used to love, I know she loved Patti LaBelle songs. Patti LaBelle's from Philly. So there are a number of Patti LaBelle songs I'll play that kind of remind me of just being home. Um, the other thing is, my mom we used to laugh at her, but she wanted to have a peanut butter and jelly shack. And we thought it was like, that's a business. And we thought at the time we were like, we would laugh, like we thought that was really funny. When I think back on it, I was like, that probably could have worked,
It's
back at
kind of
that
a good
time.
idea. Seriously. Yeah.
Kind of a good idea, yeah. And so but I never, and another thing I guess I got from that moment is that I actually owned a dessert business.
Wow.
And so I often think back about, my mom's, idea of being a business owner. And now I'm a business owner and I have her, and she taught me how to bake as well. So I have her face on my packaging. So that's how
Oh
I
man.
also help to remember and honor her.
Oh, that's great. I love that. I love that. Um, so you talked to the investigator last week. Is there any
Mhm.
current status or anything you could share with us about where it's at right now?
There's still the detective's still chasing down some leads.
Okay.
And so nothing concrete yet. But they again it's a high priority for the department. So they're still working on it. Like I said, whenever I call a detective, I usually get her pretty quickly. Like I said, she's very responsive. And like I said, I'm very, very appreciative of that. And
Yeah.
so I know, as a matter of fact, last year, um, on I believe it was my mom's birthday, and the detective called me. So and just said, "I just want you to know I'm still working on this case."
Wow.
And
Wow.
so meant a lot to me. Not only that she knew my mother's birthday, but that the fact that she would call around that time and just reassure me that they hadn't forgotten about her. That spoke volumes for me, just about that detective and the department.
Seriously, can she do us all a favor and write a book that we can hand around? Because I don't hear nearly enough stories like that. And if you do happen to send any version of this conversation her way, I just want her to hear it from us. Thank you for treating this
Yeah,
family like that. That's
yeah,
that really lights me up inside to hear, and I'm really appreciative. And my prayers and hopes are with her and you that you guys can see this through and find justice for your mother.
yeah.
If someone out
I
there that's
appreciate it.
listening right now has the piece that you're looking for, what would you say to them?
I would just say to call the tip line, call the police department, and just give whatever information you have. I mean, like I said, it'll be helpful to us, helpful to the community, but it would make you a better person to want to help and solve this crime. Uh, so we would certainly appreciate that. So
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Is there a reward available?
yes, I believe the reward is up to 40,000 $40,000 at this point. And so I think that's high compared to what normal rewards are. I think normal rewards are like 10,000.
Yeah,
So again, even if you do it for the money, just we'd like to solve this case. And so I just implore anybody who has any information, remembers anything, just call the tip in. You can call it anonymous. You don't have to give your name. Just give whatever information that you can find.
yeah. And I'm just curious, did the home stay within the family, or what has happened around that?
Yeah, so we kept the home. My
Okay.
parents worked very hard, to keep that house. They own the house, and so we're just kind of going through the options of what we want to do, but we certainly want to keep it in the family at this point.
Excellent. Excellent. Alan, I need you to promise me something. If you need any help in terms of this work that you're doing to try to get some new laws written, or if you start doing, petitions you need signed or anything like that, please let
Yeah,
me know. And please also keep me updated on any developments with this case. And of course, if there's anything I can do for you, I'm an email
yeah.
away. Please don't hesitate.
Thank you so much, John. I appreciate it.
You got it. Again, a very big thank you to Alan for joining us today, for being so open and sharing that with us. I know that there's not a lot of great sources of information about this case out there, and I'm sort of proud that I believe now we are one of the major ones to help share information and try to help this case. Again, if you have any information in the murder of Rose Goodman, please call the Philadelphia Police Homicide Detective Division at 215 686 3338. You can also remain anonymous if you call the police tip line at 215-686-TIPS. That's 215-686-8477. You can also email tips@phillypolice.com. Thank you guys so much for supporting us here at the Lord and Arts channel. I can't do this without the help of many other supporters that take the extra step. And that's people like our PayPal supporters, Angela Welch Sola and Amanda Beard. It's people like Patreon member Orange Everything. And if you want to take that extra step and help keep the ads limited here so that we can stick to the source information, share that in the best way possible, please take a moment and visit lordandarts.com. There, you can sign up for Patreon, sign up for PayPal, buy merchandise, or even just buy us a coffee like Sadie does every single month. We really appreciate that. That helps us keep the ads down, and it helps keep us here doing this for over 10 years at this point. So a big thank you for that. If you can't take that extra step, you can still help. Please hit the upvote, hit the downvote even, comment. All of that engagement tells YouTube to show this video to more people, and we need to get this video in front of the eyes of the person that has information about Rose's case, so you can still be helpful. Of course, if you have friends in the Philadelphia area, sharing this video with them, also a great way to help out on this. Take care, everyone. Have a great weekend, and please join us again next week for another mystery right here on the Lord and Arts channel.